black day in Ternopil. They are still searching for victims of the night attack by the Russians. You are watching the television news service online. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch the broadcast, and be sure to comment on what resonated with you the most today. Here are some of the topics in today's broadcast. Hell in Ternopil. Work at the site of the Russian missile strike is ongoing. The number of victims is expected to rise as more than 20 people have not made contact since the Russian attack. 2 ministers down in the government.
The government of Ukraine will not tolerate any instances of corruption.
Neither Halushchenko nor Grynychuk appeared in the Rada. Are they still in Ukraine? In Poland, suspected accomplices of anti-Ukrainian sabotage on the railway have been detained.
Right now, among various ministries, we are gathering ideas on how to convey to Russia that this is absolutely unacceptable.
Will military aid still be able to travel by rail? November 19th, 20th, and 21st are days of mourning in Ternopil. Due to a Russian attack, at least 25 people were killed in the city, including 3 children, and more than 100 were injured. We also have combined missile and drone attacks by the Russians, with 2 apartment buildings damaged. The debris removal is still ongoing, and rescuers are observing moments of silence as more than 20 people remain unaccounted for. They are being searched for. TSN correspondent Svitlana will tell us more.
Russian missiles and Shaheds attacked people's homes at 7 in the morning. In this building, the occupiers destroyed the top 4 floors.
The sound of the Shaheds is like a mosquito. At first it flies in the distance, then it gets closer, and when it falls, you can clearly hear the Shahed coming down. The sound of the rockets was very clear. You could really hear the whistling of the rockets.
The rescue operation lasted all day. The number of victims kept rising. The people under the building are not talkative. They pray that their loved ones are still alive.
I don't know what happened to him. I don't know what's going on with them on the 6th floor, but I see their section is intact. You know, where their apartment is.
Is there any contact with them?
No.
I just came over to my sister, but I stepped aside for a moment so the phone
could ring. Are all your relatives alive?
Yes, everyone is fine.
Can we approach her?
I don't know if she'll be able to talk.
Almost 200 rescuers worked at the rubble, including dog handlers and psychologists. There are more than 20 people whose relatives can't reach them. Among them is a 20-year-old young man. After a few hours, rescuers find him among the rubble and try to reach him, talking to him the whole time.
This contact is constantly maintained by those rescuers working with him. You can see them above on the top floor. Unfortunately, at this location, we can see from the 4th to the 9th floor. And
here is the moment of the miraculous rescue. The young man who was trapped for half a day is alive. Ambulances are lined up nearby. Medics are taking away the injured. This is another building that was hit by enemy fire. In the evening, they are still putting out the fire here, even though it's been 5 to 6 hours since the strikes. There are also dead and wounded here. While some are clearing the rubble in search of people, others are removing debris and covering the windows with plastic sheets.
Several private businesses have come together. 4 people each, a locksmith, a carpenter. Whoever knows how to handle tools. We're glazing, we've taken plastic sheeting and glazing beads, and we're covering the windows to keep it warm.
The industrial warehouses nearby were also attacked. There's a cloud of smoke over Ternopil. People have put on masks. The concentration of harmful substances exceeds the norm by 6.
Throughout history, there have been many different times, each marked by unique events and significant changes that have shaped the world as we know it today. Right now, the residents of Kvitsy still have needs. Materials will be provided for settlement.
The stalls of a small market next to the houses have also been destroyed.
Further down, there are clothes, but most of what we have is cosmetics, all sorts of glass items, perfumes, electronics. Everything got smashed, my father. That is...
So you won't open soon, will you? Can you work?
No, of course we won't be opening.
The elementary school, which is just a few dozen meters from the bombed-out apartment building, was also damaged.
The windows and doors are damaged. And the windows are damaged.
Both Shaheds and missiles were flying directly into a densely populated residential neighborhood. All the schools and kindergartens in this residential area cancelled classes or switched to remote learning. Due to damage to the heating network, the neighborhood was left without heating. But in the afternoon, new air measurements were taken. No harmful substances were detected anymore, only an increased level of combustion products. Svitlana Pavuk, Vitaly Pavuk, Ternopil, TSN 1+1.
This is real hell. The EU delegation responded to Russia's deadly strikes on Ternopil on social media. Katerina Maternova shared an emotional post in which she noted that this is the reality of Russian terror, the deliberate targeting of civilians. This is not a war against the army, it's an attempt to erase people and their lives. Today's killing was condemned in Norway. The local Minister of Foreign Affairs, Espen Barth Eide, called on the Kremlin to stop the terror against Ukrainian civilians. Against the backdrop of yet another missile strike, Estonia stated that Russia's senseless violence proves that true peace can only be achieved by putting pressure on Moscow. Sanctions, isolation, and holding those responsible to account must continue, as stated by the head of Estonian diplomacy. Meanwhile, neighboring Romania and Poland had to scramble their air forces today due to Russia's attack. In Poland, the airports in Rzeszów and Lublin also had to be closed, but no airspace violations were recorded there. However, today a Russian drone entered Moldovan territory. Because of this, their Ministry of Foreign Affairs has already summoned the Kremlin's ambassador to give him a talking to. A note of protest. Alongside the rescuers in Ternopil, clergy came to the scene of the tragedy to pray for those killed and wounded during this morning's terrorist attack. The Greek Catholics set up a shelter in the local archcathedral, creating a humanitarian headquarters where they are calling on caring people to bring essentials for the victims, blankets, sheets, and pillows. Warm clothes and food are also needed. From the site of the strike, he called on people to join in prayer for all those affected.
We especially pray for our fellow citizens who have died, entrusting them to God's mercy. We pray for all the wounded, for all those who have lost their homes, for all those who are now in the cold. We embrace them with our brotherly and sisterly love. We help one another, support each other, and under no circumstances do we give in to panic.
Already 46 people have sought medical assistance in Kharkiv, including 2 children aged 9 and 13. The city was under a massive drone attack during the night. Civilian infrastructure in 2 districts, Slobitsky and Osnoviansky, was hit in the affected area. One of the Shaheds crashed into a 9-story residential building, reports the TSN correspondent. Yulia Boyko will provide more details.
Kharkiv spent the night under a massive attack by strike drones. In just 20 minutes, more than 15 explosions were heard in the city. There are many injured people, including children. The Slobitsky and Osnoviansky districts suffered heavy strikes. Here, most of the drones exploded literally right next to apartment buildings. The blast wave shattered windows, damaged roofs and facades, and wrecked civilian cars. One of the Shaheds detonated right under the building. The fire engulfed the courtyard and the parking lot.
At 1 o'clock, when this Shahed chaos started, I shouted for my family to go into the hallway. Everyone rushed out, made it to the hallway in time, and that saved us from the shrapnel and the flames that were right outside our windows. It's terrifying for the lives of your loved ones. The Shahed hit just 2.5 meters in front of our window. A lot of cars were burning, exploding. The flames were reaching up to the 3rd or 4th floor.
The Shaheds were circling. They weren't just flying by, they were actually circling. About 5 or 10 minutes later, when we were already in the hallway, one hit there. Everything here started shaking, dust rose up. And the others were already in front of us. Here's the crater. If I had been lying here, I wouldn't be talking to you now.
Almost 50 people sought medical help after the night attack. Among them were 2 children aged 9 and 13 who had an acute stress reaction. Some people were hospitalized with shrapnel wounds. Currently, 5 victims remain in the hospital. In 2 districts, 40 houses were damaged, more than 3,100 windows were shattered, and 10 cars were destroyed or damaged. 3 city trolley buses and several sections of the street lighting network need repairs.
At present, 15 impact sites have been identified, where inspections of the scene are ongoing and fragments are being collected. The target was civilian infrastructure, specifically a supermarket building, an educational institution, apartment buildings, and civilian vehicles.
Due to the strike on critical infrastructure, the city is experiencing disruptions with electricity, water, and heating. Some services have already been restored as much as the technical condition of the networks allows. Work is ongoing in certain areas. The city council is warning about temporary changes in traffic patterns. Some trams and trolley buses are not running. Others are operating on altered routes. Since last night, rescuers, utility workers and volunteers have been working on site. They are clearing debris, sealing building perimeters and insulating windows so that people can stay in their homes despite the cold weather. Yulia Boykot, Lokshi Bugayenko, Kharkiv, TSN 1+1.
In the Dnipropetrovsk region, the enemy targeted critical infrastructure. As a result of the drone attack, 5 energy workers were injured. They were working at the facility at the time. One of the victims is in serious condition. In the Lviv region, the occupiers also struck an energy facility, causing a fire to break out. A woodworking enterprise and food warehouses were also damaged. In particular, facilities for pizza production and a post office with nearly 1,000 parcels were destroyed. In Lviv, due to heavy smoke and polluted air, people with allergies are advised to avoid going outside and not to open their windows. The energy infrastructure became a target for the enemy in the Carpathian region. It took firefighters several hours to extinguish the blaze. A mother and 2 children were injured. 9 houses have been destroyed. Residents are urged to remain vigilant. Enemy drones may have dropped cluster munitions. 2 people were killed and 3 wounded in Kherson region did not survive the artillery shelling. A 40-year-old man in Kherson, 2 more city residents were injured in Obukiv. In Novovoronsovka, the Russians attacked a municipal utility vehicle with a drone. 1 worker was killed there and his colleague sustained injuries in Obukiv. Kostiantinivka, that's in Donetsk region. The Russians attacked with Smerch rockets, artillery and drones. They killed 1 person and wounded 2 more city residents. In Oleksievo-Druskivka, an FPV drone hit a civilian car, injuring the driver. The occupiers dropped 2 aerial bombs on Sloviansk. The suspicion announced to Timur Mindich mentions the businessman's connections with the president and other officials. As part of the anti-corruption operation called Midas, Mindich was charged under several articles at once. This is stated in the text of the suspicion, which came into the possession of the publication Zerkalo Tyzhnya. In particular, Mindich was notified of suspicion for creating a criminal organization and recruiting participants into the criminal organization. He is also accused of acquiring and managing property obtained through criminal means, money laundering, as well as illegally influencing ministers and controlling financial flows in the energy sector. The suspicion states that Mindich used his friendly relations with Zelenskyy and current and former officials to achieve this. According to the text of the suspicion, Mindich controlled financial flows in the energy sector with the assistance of Herman Halushchenko, who at that time held the position of Minister of Energy and later became Minister of Justice. The document also states that the businessman was influenced not only by Halushchenko but also by Rustem Umerov, who is now the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council and previously served as Minister of Defense. Meanwhile, by a constitutional majority, the Verkhovna Rada dismissed Minister of Justice Herman Halushchenko and Minister of Energy Svitlana Grynychuk, who are among the figures involved in the corruption scandal concerning the embezzlement of funds in the energy sector. Today, as was the case the day before, neither Halushchenko nor Grynychuk appeared at the parliamentary session, so the deputies voted to summon them to the Verkhovna Rada together with the Prime Minister. However, there are also rumors in the corridors that the former ministerial pair has already left the territory of Ukraine. Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko also ignored the parliamentary summons, citing a meeting with IMF representatives. Instead of her, Deputy Prime Minister Taras Kachka came to the session hall to answer the MP's questions. According to him, the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Energy do not have official business trips, so the whereabouts of these government officials are currently unknown. Given the public outcry over the corruption case involving Halushchenko and Grynychuk, the government insists on the dismissal of the high-ranking officials, a move that was ultimately supported by the deputies.
The government of Ukraine will not tolerate any instances of corruption and will respond to them without waiting for the completion of any procedures in accordance with criminal proceedings.
What do you think about the consequences and development of the corruption scandal? Share your thoughts in the comments to this broadcast on YouTube. Of course, give our episode a like and subscribe to the tsn.u channel. In the meantime, I will continue with the broadcast. The enemy has entered the southern part of Myrnohrad. Our forces have detected up to 30 soldiers in the city and are trying to eliminate them. The occupiers are also advancing in the Pokrovsk direction. Over the past day, Ukrainian defenders have stopped 50 assault and offensive actions by the aggressors there. The Russians are also pressing north of Pokrovsk. Fighting has intensified in the Novopavlivka direction as well. There, the occupiers broke through into the village of Novopavlivka, using up to 10 pieces of equipment. And for now, our forces are unable to completely drive them out of there. On this section of the front, the Russians are advancing deeper into Dnipropetrovsk region, particularly toward the highway connecting Pavlohrad and Pokrovsk. The aggressor is also pressing in the Pridniprovsk direction. There, Ukrainian defenders repelled both attacks by the occupiers in the area of the Antonivsky Bridge. The situation is no less difficult. The fighting is flaring up in the Zaporizhzhia sector. In the past few days, we have lost over 100 square kilometers of territory there, which is 6 villages. And the enemy does not stop its assault actions. Just yesterday, the enemy tried to advance 19 times in this section of the front. Our soldiers are also having a hard time in Kupiansk. To prevent our forces from advancing in the city, the Russians have brought in reinforcements, according to the defense forces. The General Staff reports that since the beginning of the current day, there have already been more than 140 combat clashes. The Russians are forcibly conscripting residents of occupied Henichesk into the Russian army. According to the partisan movement Ateş, the enemy has launched a forced mobilization campaign in the Kherson region. There, the local occupation authorities and the commandant's office arrest people for minor, supposedly legal violations in order to obtain a formal pretext for detention. Next, the Russians use threats, pressure, and outright blackmail against local residents to force them to choose between signing a contract with the Russian army or remaining under the threat of further punishment. Let me remind you that a few days earlier, the Ukrainian Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War reported that since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia has forcibly mobilized more than 46,000 Ukrainians in the temporarily occupied territories, in violation of international norms. The terms for a ceasefire in Ukraine may become known as early as this week. The publication Politico reports that the United States is preparing a framework for a peace agreement with Russia. The plan reportedly consists of 28 points and was developed by the White House in coordination with Russia. During the preparations, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff-Musica held 3 days of negotiations with the Russian representative Kirill Dmitriev in Miami. Now, the Trump administration reportedly believes that the plan is on the verge of a major breakthrough. Reuters, citing a Ukrainian official, writes that Kyiv is not participating in the preparation of this ceasefire plan. Meanwhile, guests from the Pentagon, American ones, have arrived in Kyiv. According to Politico, these are high-ranking officials, specifically Army Secretary Dan Driscoll and Chief of Staff General Randy George. They are the highest-ranking Pentagon officials since the Trump administration to visit Kyiv. This is also the largest visit by officials from the current U.S. administration to Kyiv since February. The American guests plan to meet with military representatives, Ukrainian officials, and President Zelenskyy. According to Politico, they will discuss how to break the deadlock in peace negotiations with Russia, despite the fact that Moscow has already rejected such initiatives. They will also address strengthening cooperation between Kyiv and Washington, particularly regarding the exchange of technologies in the field of drones and autonomous munitions. Turkish President Erdoğan called on Russia and Ukraine to resume the Istanbul process during a joint press conference with the Ukrainian president. Just a few days ago, Ukraine's Deputy Foreign Minister Serhiy Kyslytsya stated that any post-Istanbul negotiations with the Russians have been halted due to a lack of progress. Volodymyr Zelenskyy arrived in Ankara on a working visit. In the morning, he laid flowers and honored the memory of the first president of the Turkish Republic with a moment of silence. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. This is a traditional gesture for leaders visiting Turkey. He also expressed condolences for those who died in Ternopil. Overall, Turkey is already the 4th country in the president's 4-day tour. The main outcomes of the visits to Greece, France, and Spain include, in particular, air defense missiles, a new agreement for combat aircraft, at least $500 million in European support, and guaranteed gas supplies. And this is more than Ukraine could have expected. More about the president's visit to Turkey will be shared by our colleague Irina Kondrachuk. For more than 2 hours, President Zelenskyy and Erdoğan held a one-on-one conversation, as well as talks with their delegations. The main goal of the visit remains bringing Russia back to the negotiation table, as well as resuming the process of returning Ukrainian prisoners of war home.
During today's talks, I emphasized that the Istanbul negotiations must continue. They became a key stage in the diplomatic resolution of the conflict. We believe it is appropriate for the Istanbul process to be resumed in an expanded format.
We are making every effort to resume exchanges of prisoners, to bring home Ukrainian soldiers and civilians held by Russia, including Crimean Tatars and political prisoners, and religious prisoners held by Russia. Of course, we are working to bring back our abducted Ukrainian children. We have platforms working everywhere, and in Turkey there are all the necessary opportunities for this work. We are grateful for such assistance in bringing our children back. We hope that by the end of the year, we will resume.
Overall, Turkey is already the fourth country in the president's 4-day tour. Previously, there were Greece, France, and Spain. The main results include, in particular, new deliveries of missiles for air defense, an agreement on the purchase of combat aircraft, as well as at least €500 million in support and guaranteed gas supplies to Ukraine. So did these results meet expectations? TSN asked the Ukrainian delegation about the preliminary agreements and expectations. In particular, Deputy Head of the President's Office Ihor Zhopa told us that, in fact, they expected less, so they are returning home satisfied. Irina Kondrachuk, Yevhen Litvinenko, TSN 1+1. In Poland, suspected accomplices of sabotage on the railways have been detained. Investigators now have information about at least 4 individuals who are still in the country and may have helped organize the sabotage. As for the perpetrators themselves, these are 2 Ukrainian citizens who have already fled to Belarus. All of them had been working for Russian intelligence for a long time. Today, in response to the brazen incident, official Warsaw announced the closure of the last Russian consulate in Gdańsk and is considering other methods of punishment. The latest details about the sabotage, which affected strategic railways used to deliver military aid to Ukraine and transport passengers, can be seen next in the report.
In Poland, the first suspects have been detained in the case of sabotage on a section of railway that is critically important for delivering aid to Ukraine and transporting passengers. The main perpetrators are 2 Ukrainian citizens who have long collaborated with Russian intelligence. Before the incident, they arrived from Belarus, and immediately after committing the act, they fled back there. However, Polish investigators managed to identify 4 of their possible accomplices who are still in the country. Who they are has not yet been disclosed. Later, Warsaw will demand the extradition of the actual perpetrators from Russia and Belarus. But for now, they have decided to punish the brazen sabotage by closing the last consulate in Gdańsk. The previous 2 in Poznan and Krakow had already been closed in response to past sabotage incidents orchestrated by Moscow. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski announcing the decision called the railway bombings an act of state terrorism by the Kremlin with a clear intent to cause casualties. He also warned against the spread of disinformation regarding the attack. The diplomat plans to discuss this incident with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, as well as to hold a briefing for the European Union Foreign Affairs Council. At the meeting, he plans to urge other EU countries to restrict the movement of the 2,000 Russian diplomats accredited in the bloc, since, according to him, up to 40% of them are engaged in activities incompatible with their diplomatic status, which indicates that they may be involved in intelligence work.
The Russian GRU regularly hires subcontractors under false flags to do its dirty work. This time, it was not just an act of sabotage as before, but an act of state terrorism, since the clear intention was to cause human casualties. This will be met with a response from our side, not only diplomatically, which we will announce in the coming days. We will also introduce additional restrictions on the movement of Russian diplomats in Poland. But this is not the end. We have just identified those responsible. Now, among various ministries, we are gathering ideas on how to make it clear to Russia that this is absolutely unacceptable.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine notes that Russia deliberately recruits people with Ukrainian passports for such actions in order to shift the blame for its crimes onto our citizens. But in Kyiv, They expressed confidence that partners understand exactly who is the source of the sabotage. The incident on the Polish railway was something that the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, decided to discuss with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk during their phone conversation today. The politicians agreed to work together to prevent such situations.
The social platform Telegram was used to organize subversive activities and launch a disinformation campaign against Ukraine. I noted that similar subversive actions are carried out against Ukraine every day, including on the railways. At Ukrzaliznytsia, we have implemented appropriate measures to counter such sabotage. Our information matches. All the evidence points to a Russian trace behind all of this. No one but the Russians is interested in this. Ukraine is ready to cooperate with Poland at various levels and to share all information. We have agreed to create a Ukrainian-Polish group that will work on preventing similar situations by Russia in the future.
The sabotage of the railway also drew a response in Brussels. The EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, coincidentally presented the project for a military Schengen to enable rapid troop movements. The diplomat says that, given the recent acts of sabotage, it is more relevant than ever.
I'll start with the attack on the Polish railway line on Monday, which highlights the unprecedented risk to European transport infrastructure. Russia's attacks are becoming increasingly brazen. Our critical infrastructure needs greater protection.
The EU's military Schengen envisions the rapid and unhindered movement of troops and weaponry across all of Europe. They aim to implement it by 2027. 17 billion euros will be allocated for the implementation of the project, which aligns with the 1.5% of GDP spending that NATO allies have committed to invest in security. As Kaja Kallas explained, the ambitious goal is to reduce army redeployment from weeks to just a matter of days. Because some EU countries still require a 45-day advance notice for troops from other countries to be able to pass through their territory, even just for conducting exercises. The document states that Ukraine should also become part of the pan-European military mobility area. The European Union will invite Kyiv as observers and advisors so that Ukrainians can share their valuable military experience with their partners. Brussels, for its part, will help improve dual-use infrastructure. It will also streamline the rules for transporting military equipment and the procedures for crossing borders throughout Europe.